Hi guys, and welcome back to Chop's Garage. For those of you that haven't seen the channel before, it's all about me starting up a small used car dealership and the challenges that I face along the way, what I do to fix up the cars, how I flip them, the profits that are made, and also, one of the biggest things, dealing with the public. So the subject of today's video is about a phone call I had yesterday on a little Fiat 500, just like the one pictured here, that I sold 7 months ago. It was a Fiat 500. It was a 2008 1.3 diesel lounge with only 35,000 miles and a full service history. We knew this car. It came from someone we knew over at the Fiat Alfa Romeo dealership I was working out of at the time. And the car had come to us as it had its master cylinder had failed, and the chap didn't want to fix up. He was getting a brand new Fiat 500, didn't want to fix up, so he sold it to us with us having to repair the master cylinder. Now, in the preparation period of getting the car ready, this lady came in, about 70 years old, looking for a car, and she wanted a low mileage car and wanted a Fiat 500. And we said we didn't have anything at the time, but we were prepping this Fiat 500 lounge, so we're doing the master cylinder. And once we'd done that, we were going to put it in for a new MOT, and we were going to continue prepping it, and we're going to put it up on the market for 3,800, which was the value at the time. That's what was Auto Trader's recommended retail price was for the car, because of the mega low miles. It's a lounge, which is the most desirable spec, in white as well. And it's a car that, had the panoramic roof. It would have sold for that all day long. The only trouble with this, the lady said she only had a budget of £3,000. Now, those of you that watch my channel will know it's almost to the year I've had exactly the same sort of thing happen. On a Fiat 500 again, about the same age, but a convertible, with a lady who wanted one to get a convertible for her daughter, but only had a £3,000 budget. Now, this story is going to become very familiar to you guys as you start to go through it. So she said she only had £3,000. I said, look, the only way I can do it for you for £3,000 is it had an MOT 4 months earlier, and on that MOT, which we'll have a look at in a minute, it was advisory free. So I said the only way we could do it for you is to sell it to you as is without doing a new MOT. It had a full service history, so it had been serviced recently, so we didn't really need to do that. We just needed to get this clutch master cylinder done so that it drove well. And obviously, with 38,000 miles, the car was in really good condition. So we agreed a price of £3,100 for her. That was the price we agreed. And she was going to come pick it up when we finished the clutch master cylinder on it. She tried to hammer me down even lower and get it exactly £3,000, but I said, look, we couldn't do it, not with doing the clutch master cylinder and so forth. It just wasn't feasible. So we went and prepped the car, and in terms of putting the clutch master cylinder together, a hell of a valet, machine polish, all that, and it came out looking absolutely immaculate. And like I say, it had a MOT from 4 months earlier that was advisory free. We'd looked over the car, it looked all good to us, and we sent it out the door to her. The current retail for this car, by the way, 7 months on, is still £3,500. But again, because of the mileage and because she hasn't done a lot of miles in it and the condition of it. So interesting, the current retail is still higher than what she actually paid for the car. So so the car went out, and 7 months on, hadn't heard any more. But I had a phone call yesterday, and I had a phone call from this lady telling me that I'd been dishonest to her. She felt like she'd been scammed, and that the car was no good, that she'd read my reviews and she thought I could be trusted, but I couldn't be. Blah, 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 blah. She'd put the car in for an MOT, and it had failed really badly. She had to spend a load of money on it, and there was a load of work still needed doing. Now, in these scenarios, a lot of the time you just got to let people sort of just vent and rant. There's no point trying to interject. I learned that from my previous years in sales and dealing as a senior manager with other people's customer complaints. You got to let them rant and let it get out of it. Once she'd had a rant and called me every name under the sun and questioned all of my honesty, I asked for the registration of the car, which she hadn't given me by that point, and said I could have a look at the MOT online, which I did. So let's have a quick look at what I found when I looked at the MOT. So, firstly, this is the MOT the car went out with. In 2019, it had something for brake discs and a tyre. 28th September 2020, it was advisory free with 34,000 miles. And then we went on to sell the car to at the end of February 2021. So the car had done less than 1,000 miles from that MOT when we got it in because of this clutch master cylinder problem. You can see there's no note of any issues at all there. Like I say, it's totally advisory free. So this is the MOT she got, that she called me up about. So what we've got, 2,000 miles, is it? Sorry, since that MOT, something like that. So she has done next to no miles in it either. She's obviously had it sitting around. Let's have a go through. Now, on initial signs, it looks a bit scary. I can understand how it's scary. There's an awful lot of stuff there. It's got offside rear valve stem seriously damaged or perished. So it's a valve stem seal on a tyre, okay? And then repair immediately. So this is the only thing it's actually failed for other than the valve stem, is the near side front shock absorber has a serious fluid leak. Near side upper shock absorber have excessively worn bush. Offside upper shock absorber has excessively worn bush. So we've got one shock absorber that's leaking and two bushes that's worn out. That's what's actually needed to get the car through the MOT. Now, then we've got the advisories. Now, this is the stuff that garages do manage to scare people with quite a lot if they don't go through and explain them. So you've got near side rear coil spring corroded, offside rear coil spring corroded. Now, we know that back in 2019 that was noted and then disappeared again. And in between then, it's only done 3,000 or 4,000 miles. So this is down to the discretion of an MOT tester as to whether to note the rear springs are corroded or not. Because all that's really happened is the powder coatings come off the springs and they get a coating of surface rust on them. And some MOT testers will mark that down, some MOT testers won't. And then you've got near side front tyre slightly damaged, cracking or perishing, offside front tyre slightly damaged, cracking or perishing. So those rear springs don't need doing. The tyres here, the car's been sitting for a very long time, and I don't know if the tyres have been properly inflated or not, but this again is a difficult one. I've known tyres, them say that, and you put a bit of tyre shine on the car and then there's no cracking at all. The cracking is so minor that it just absorbs it and it closes up. But they don't have to be replaced. They don't have to be replaced. And again, it could just be that it's been sat on under inflated tyres. Then you've got near side rear exhaust silencer corroded. Well, any of you who've worked on a Fiat 500 know there's an outer skin on the silencers that corrodes. I normally pull them off, to be honest, just cut them and pull them off because they're not actually part of the exhaust system. They're just an extra skin around the outside, and the silencer underneath is normally fine. Again, doesn't have to be done. Central exhaust clamp missing, system secure. So it's basically saying here that the front exhaust clamp is missing, but the exhaust system's still safe as it is. Again, any of you worked on a Fiat 500 know there is a clamp at the very front that rots out on the exhaust to gearbox, I think there is. That's where it is. Because the manifold is only a few, only a very, about a foot away from that, and it's got all the bolts from the manifold fitting it there, and then there's another mounting a little bit further down. The system isn't insecure at all with that not in place. It's not needed. So again, that isn't needed. So nothing actually needs to be replaced as we're going through this so far. They're just advisories, they're just notes, and might be a bit overzealous, I'm not sure. Rear subframe corroded but not seriously weakened. Now, how many times have we been through this on Fiat 500s and many other cars? If you give me any Fiat 500 this age and put it on a ramp, you will find surface rust on the rear subframe. It is basically a great big long piece of metal with your springs either side of it. It's getting hammered all the time as you drive along. It's powder coated, I think. I don't even know if it is from the factory, to be honest. I think it might be raw metal from the factory because they've seemed to surface rust so super quickly. But they're seriously thick metal. All it is surface rust, and it says there it's not seriously weakened because it's just surface rust. So again, it's one of those things. It can sound very scary. And the last lady that called me, almost like it said a year to the date, said the same thing. She told her the garage had told her the whole rear end of the car was rotten. But this is what was on the MOT when I looked at it. And this is solved simply by wire brushing the rear subframe down and painting it, which is something I would normally do before a retailer car. But obviously if someone's asking me to have a car at a discounted price as is, and I know that it's not a safety issue, it's a cosmetic issue, then it wasn't something I was going to do. And then near side front brake disc worn, pitted or scored but not seriously weakened. Again, if the car's been sitting completely, the pitting is going to have come from the car sitting and rusting up, one would have thought. And after driving it around a bit, I would imagine a lot of that will come off. But so this is what the lady said, why I'd sold her a really bad car and she had to spend a fortune on it, and I was unfair and I was dishonest and all these kind of things, and as a result of this MOT result. So I went through it with her bit by bit and tried to explain to her what all of these things were, and said, look, at the end of the day, all you've actually got to fail from is a valve stem seal on a tyre and a shock absorber and 2 bushes. I said, any Fiat 500 this age, you're going to have those kind of things on it. And people don't understand, if you leave a car sitting, those rubbers are actually even more likely to crack up than they are if you move it around. If you leave a car sitting, your bushes wear quicker. From what I see, a car sitting around, they crack up and wear quicker and dry out far more than the vehicle's used. People seem to think leaving cars sitting is a positive thing, but it isn't at all. But anyway, any Fiat 500 on a 2008, we're getting a 13-year-old car here, is going to have little bits needing doing at the MOT. Now, obviously, none of these things were noted on the last MOT, so have we got an overzealous MOT tester? I don't know. We've only done a few thousand miles since. But the customer we bought it from, I can assure you, is not the kind of person to take it to a dodgy MOT centre. They were a very well-off person. They were going to get a brand new Fiat 500, and this one had a full service history. So I went through all of these things with her and explained to her what had been done. And she then said to me, well, can you contribute towards the MOT cost? So we've now got a pass on the car. You can see it just has the list of advisories now. That one I cut off, I think, accidentally on the previous one. It said there was an imbalancement of the brakes. It was only just met. Again, if it's been sitting, I imagine that's the sliders on the front calipers. Get those off and give them a clean. It'll probably sort that right out. So she's had the work done, and she said, well, can you contribute towards it? And I feel like I've had to spend a lot of money when I shouldn't have had to spend a lot of money. So they put on a shock absorber, 2 bushes, rear bushes, and obviously fix the tyre valve. Hopefully they didn't just do a new wheel. Hopefully they did a new tyre. They did a tyre valve instead. So that's what I've done, a shock absorber and 2 bushes. We can see that from the last MOT. The bill she had was £400, which seems very steep for me because the cost of parts on that is £80. I don't know what the tyre valve is, to be fair to them. I don't know what a tyre valve is, but the shock absorber and 2 bushes is £80 in parts. To swap out the 2 bushes on the back of the car on a Fiat 500 takes next to no time at all. And the front shock absorber is a little bit more fiddly, but again, doesn't take any time. I'd be surprised there's more than 2 hours labour in any of that work. So she said, can I contribute towards it? And I said, no, sorry, I can't. I said, you've had the car for 7 months, and what you've had there in terms of work that actually needed to do to get the car to pass its MOT is entirely normal for a Fiat 500 of that age. I could show you a load of Fiat 500s we put in for MOTs, and they all have similar things, even if they are minters. They have those things. That's, it's an older car. That's what they have. So they can't contribute towards them. She said, well, what can you do? Well, obviously at this point, having been called every name under the sun in terms of dishonesty, I was half inclined to say I'd do absolutely nothing for her at all. But we have got a lady who is, 70 years old. She's worried about her car. She's worried about all these things listed. So what I ended up agreeing to do, and comment down below as to what your thoughts are on this, is I agreed to bring the car in and do her an underbody rear axle, rear springs treatment. This is the bit that causes all the fuss. This beam you can see the red arrow on is the bit that causes all the fuss. As you can see there, it's thick metal, but over the years that gets surface rust on it, as do the springs you can see on the left hand there with the orange rubber through the middle of the springs there. The powder coating wears off of them and they get surface rust on them. So all that needs to be done is it needs to be wire brushed down and stone chipped. And while I'm at it, I'll probably pull the front calipers and just check the sliders on those and clean those up. So I've offered to, I'm going to pick up the car because it's very local to me. I'm going to bring it up, I'm going to wire brush this all down and stone chip it and do it for her. And I'm going to do that free of charge. She then did ask for me to check over all the other things. But at the end of the day, I'm not a mechanic and I'm not going to get involved in a lot of those other things. I'll do the simple stuff, but if she wants the other stuff doing, she needs to pay a mechanic to do it, and they can deem whether it's absolutely necessary or not to do those other repairs. But in terms of this corrosion stuff she's worried about, I'll bring it in, I'll wire brush it down, I'll stone chip it before I drop it back to her again. And I said, if I do that, chances are next MOT you won't even have a mention of those things on the MOT. So what's your thoughts? How have I handled that? How do you think she handled it? Do you think it's fair enough? And yeah, I'll just be interested in your feedback. But it's incredibly similar to what happened with the Fiat 500. Exactly, almost a year to the date. That was a lady as well who wanted a car super cheap, and didn't want it prepped, or at least didn't want to pay for the prep, and had a similar thing. Again, it was the rusty rear axle side of things. So what we know with Fiat 500s now is not to do that kind of deal on any Fiat 500s, and to basically do that rear axle treatment and rear spring treatment on any Fiat 500 that goes out the door. But yeah, again, be interested in your feedback, guys. Comment down below, let me know what your thoughts are on that. Appreciate you watching the video as always, and I'll catch me again soon for my normal content of actually fixing up the cars and prepping them and selling them. And if any of you haven't watched any of those videos before and think, is this just a dodgy dealer trying to get out of poor prep, go back and watch some of my other videos and see the extents I go to on the cars, where people do pay me the asking price for them. And that's my top tip, guys. Pay dealers the asking price for the cars. Don't try and get them as is with a big discount, because unless you're prepared to carry on and do the work for yourself later on, then you're only going to regret it. Pay the price, pay the premium for it being prepped properly, as long as you know it has been prepped properly. Anyway, thanks again. Catch you later.